Well, he's the former governor of Massachusetts and just launched a run for president as a Republican, challenging President Trump.
Governor Bill Weld, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Well, Attorney General William Barr, let's get to the news of the day right away, released the redacted Mueller report today. It says that the Trump campaign knew of and benefited from help from the Russians, but did not establish that there was a crime or that they coordinated with the Russians. And it laid out the case for obstruction. It had 10 points where they said this might be obstructive behavior and left it to Congress. What was your reaction to the findings from this report today?
I was a little puzzled that the staff decided not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment, which they said right up front. And then all of Volume 2, the report, is about the evidence of President Trump, whether he obstructed justice or not. And it just lays it out in gory detail, trying to get other people to lie to investigators. And I'm talking about senior intelligence officials and ambassadorial designees, you know, high-ranking people, and inducing and suborning perjury before sworn perjury. And that's a total obstruction of justice, and you know, lying himself.
So you think it was clear-cut that he did obstruct?
Oh yeah, no. If they'd made the under the traditional principles of federal prosecution, it would have been almost a lay-down decision to seek an indictment because you have enough admissible evidence to sustain a conviction on appeal.
It's interesting. You know Robert Mueller well.
I know
He's
him well.
worked for you in the past.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. Why you think he approached it this way, and do you think the American people should see the whole unredacted report? Or Congress should?
Yeah, except for Congress certainly should see everything, and public would be everything except the classified information and some personally derogatory stuff that's not relevant. It's okay to excise that as well. And I feel pretty strongly that Bob Mueller should be permitted to and encouraged to testify personally before Congress. I mean, the conclusion of the report was, over to you, Congress. That was their conclusion.
He referred it to Congress on the obstruction question. Let's get to your primary challenge. Why does the president need a challenger in your mind?
Well, it might be good for him to have a challenger, but I think he needs a challenger because he's been very destructive over the last 2 years to American priorities and American assets, our democracy, our democratic assets. He's pursuing abroad a strategy of let's insult our military allies and let's encourage dictators, Putin, Kim, Duterte, now Viktor Orban. He's trying to drive him out of the West. He's hungry into the Soviet orbit. It's just domestically on spending, he hasn't cut a dime. He says climate change is a hoax. I mean, he and I are two large orange men who have nothing in common except for that. So it's going to be interesting, I'll tell you that.
Well, it's interesting because by the metrics that he uses, he says it's the strongest economy in 50 years, lowest unemployment, the stock market's doing great, the rest of the world is afraid of America.
Yeah, but
that's
really all he says. Well, go ahead.
Right, so are you surprised that at this point 89% of Republicans say that they approve of the president and they've come around?
I must say I'm a little bit surprised, and you know, the reaction on the ground that I get in New Hampshire, where I've been spending a lot of time, is not that at all. It's good luck to you. Thank goodness somebody stepped forward and planted a flag.
And those are Republicans saying that to you?
Republicans and independents, they can all vote in the Republican primary. It's like Massachusetts.
You can have crossover votes.
Crossover state. There are 20 crossover states.
And you're going right after New Hampshire. Why is that?
Well, that's a state that if you do well in, look at Pat Buchanan in 1992, you can have a big impact. President Bush, H.W. Bush, was at 91% overall popularity in December of 91, 2 months before the primary, and he lost the election because of Pat Buchanan. So you don't know what's going to happen. But I think this is, with all those crossover states and a lot of bumps in the road still to come, I think this is winnable nationally, not just New Hampshire.
And you were very successful as a Massachusetts Republican, serving as governor. But, of course, that's a very unique description, right? Where do you differ on policy from President Trump that you want voters in New Hampshire to understand?
I want to cut spending. I'm an economic conservative. I was rated the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States when I was here in office. I don't think Mr. Trump is an economic conservative by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think climate change is a hoax. I don't go around, you know, with one-word slogans, a hoax, a wall. You know, I believe we need more work visas for immigrants, not less, you know, we don't need to demonize every other country in the world in the name of, quote, nationalism, close quote. You know, they say being a patriot is when you love your own country and your own people, and being a nationalist is when hatred of every other country is the most important thing, as happens in Europe.
We want to get you on the record on some of President Trump's signature issues to date. So just, if you can,
sure.
yes or no responses on some of these, rapid fire. Would you have voted for his tax reform package?
Oh, yes, in a heartbeat. I never met a tax cut I didn't like.
And would you have voted to approve the declaration for the emergency funding for the border wall?
No, probably not. I mean, he said, I didn't have to do this, I'm just doing it, so that kind of means it's not an emergency. I don't think that's the most important issue in the world, I must say, because, you know, he was doing that over $8.7 billion, and then a few days later, the wall he wanted was 200 miles long, so that's not $8 billion.
Do you support his decision to have the Justice Department stop defending Obamacare? You worked in the Department of Justice.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think we have no consensus in Congress as to Obamacare. One party's on one side, one's on the other. It's a little bit too much government for my taste, but there's things that can be done. You can get individuals more power by having health savings accounts. You can go at prescription drug prices by letting people buy their stuff in Canada if they want to. I think individuals should have more power than they do under Obamacare, but you can amend it. You don't have to say we're going to repeal it, because you know that's not going to happen.
Would you have voted for Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court?
Yeah, very smart guys. I mean, the problem, obviously, at the end there with Brett Kavanaugh, that was very unfortunate. But at the end of the day, I would have voted for him.
You would have voted for him. Do you support the president's threat or proposal to transport undocumented immigrants or asylum seekers to so-called sanctuary cities?
No. I mean, that's atrocious. It's just his habit of doing the most inflammatory thing he can to stir up the pot and get groups pitted against each other. You know, I'm on the liberty side of the Republican Party. I think individual rights is the most important thing, and the essence of democracy is that the individual shall never be thrust in a corner. Mr. Trump's read of things, as I see it, his first reaction is, let's thrust the individual in the corner. And he goes after individuals by name. You know, the woman whose son was killed fighting for us in the Middle East, he went after her by name. What's her problem? She's a Muslim. Was she muzzled? Why didn't she say something? That's not presidential behavior.
And so you seem to be hearing from voters who you meet in New Hampshire who want you to take up this challenge. What is your pitch to voters of New Hampshire about why that they should support you as you work toward the New Hampshire
Well, I'm
primary?
an economic conservative. They kind of know me. I get along with everybody. I reach across the aisle. I get things done. We certainly did, thanks in large measure to Paul Cellucci, my great lieutenant governor, when I was here in Massachusetts. And I'm an authentic outdoorsman. I'm kind of a Northeasterner, kind of a New Hampshire guy. I spend a lot of time up there. So meeting people there is very easy. I was saying earlier that campaigning in New Hampshire diners is one of my favorite things.
I can imagine so.
I love diners. I love parades, you know.
All right, well, we'll see how it goes. Governor Bill Weld, thank you so much. Candidate for president. By the way, we are going to be actively inviting all candidates for president to come on our newscast, talk to viewers. Thank you for being the first one.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Governor Weld, thank you so much.